We are somehow over halfway through the 2020s as an entire decade. So I'm gonna give you guys my top 20 favorite movies of the 2020s so far. What's going on, guys? I'm Chris and welcome back to another video. So today I'm giving you my 20 favorite movies of the 2020s. It felt fitting to do this video considering we are somehow over halfway through this decade. A very strange decade, to say the least. Pandemic sort of defined the first couple years, and those years don't even feel real, frankly. But let's talk movies today on a more positive note. I've made a top 10 video for my favorite movies from 2020 onward. So if you add that up, that's 50 movies right there. Well, not all those movies could make this list, and sometimes movies on this list that I've made might be higher than they initially were in a top 10 placement. It's just based on how I'm feeling as of recording this video. But before I get into this, hit that like button, comment down below your favorite movies of the decade so far, and of course subscribe to that notification bell to help me reach my goal of 150,000 subscribers here on the channel. Without further ado, let's dive in. At number 20 on my list, I've got Saturday Night. This came out in 2024, and I think it ended up being right in my top 5 of the year. This movie works for me. It's just my kind of film where it's really well written, there's clever dialogue, it's sharp, the comedy's there, and it's chronicling like the final 90 minutes leading up to the first ever SNL broadcast. So it's in a way a biopic, right? I dug it. Lorne Michaels was like the lead of the film, and he's just trying to hold together this SNL cast and get to the broadcast because it's chaotic, and it lets you know from the beginning, hey, this is not going to be a calm movie. Things are just going wrong left and right. There's this chaotic energy through and through, but I was eating it up and I was so invested in the story. Plus, the actors that got to play the comedy icons from the 70s were spot on. The guy who plays Chevy Chase, I don't know the actor's name, crushed it. I think he was the standout to me, but stacked cast. Really fast-paced film and fascinating to me, very informative about those early days of SNL. At number 19 on my list, I've got The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. This is a prequel set within the Hunger Games universe based on a book of the same name by the same author who wrote the main Hunger Games series, and this movie focuses on Coriolanus Snow, that is President Snow as we would come to know him, and his downfall, essentially. We see sort of a rise and fall within him and how quickly he mentally spirals downward for the worse, leading to him becoming Snow and, being a part of the atrocities that would take place over the years in the Hunger Games series as we would come to see him played by Donald Sutherland. Lucy Gray Baird is one of the main characters, and she's played by Rachel Zegler. Phenomenal in this movie. I mean, she sings so well in every movie I've seen her in with a musical number. She crushes it. And I was really blown away by the score in this film. On top of that, Olivia Rodrigo has the song that plays over the credits. You can't catch me now. All right, I'll spare your ears. And this is set years and years before the Hunger Games we would know that came out in like 2012, 2013 with the Hunger Games and Catching Fire. So technologically, this world hasn't advanced all that much. So seeing that early era of the Hunger Games before they were really developed into what we would know them as was truly intriguing stuff. And this movie's got action, drama. Some people will say the third act isn't, the best. I actually dug that third act quite a bit. So to me, it's a very strong entry in the Hunger Games universe. And I'm looking forward to Sunrise on the Reaping, which I think the book comes out in a couple months. The movie's coming out next year, which is crazy to say 2026 is next year. Time's flying. But at 18 on my list, I've got Godzilla -1. To me, this is the best Godzilla movie I've ever seen. Now, I haven't seen a bunch, and I'm kind of just comparing this to the MonsterVerse, so the standard is not really that high, to be frank. But Godzilla -1 really kind of took the world by storm when it released. It wasn't really on anyone's radar, and then it came out and was the talk of the town all over social media. It did well at the box office, and the movie, I believe, won the Oscar for visual effects, which is damn impressive considering the film only had like a $15 million budget, maybe even less, and it looks better than the MonsterVerse movies, than a lot of these other big blockbuster films. Godzilla -1 was special because, to me, it didn't put such a heavy emphasis on just monster mayhem. It actually humanized characters. Now, in the MonsterVerse, which again, that's my comparison point here for you guys, it's filled with these boring human characters, but in this film, no, you actually understand every single one of the characters in this film. It reminded me a lot of Jaws, where, yeah, you get some, horrific shark kills, but that's not what the movie's really about. It's about these humans, and so this is a real human story to me, where I actually bought into these characters. and the world they lived in. And, it tackled a lot of real deep themes, cowardice being one of them, the consequences of war and just the struggle of trying to get by in your day-to-day life. But it also showed how horrifying Godzilla really was, and he was the villain of this film. There's no, ifs, ands, or buts about it. So I like that we got to see in, a big Godzilla film that released in the US. I know it was worldwide, but in the MonsterVerse films, Godzilla can kind of become a hero in a way. He's a villain here, and I really was appreciative of that. So this Godzilla movie worked for me, and it's by far my favorite that I've seen. But at number 17 on my list, I've got West Side Story, directed by Steven Spielberg, from 2021. When I initially saw this movie, I wasn't as high on it. It took a couple more rewatches for me to fully love it, because I have been fond of that original West Side Story since I was in high school, the original film. I've never seen any Broadway production of it, but I was a little taken aback by some of the changes in the order of events for the musical numbers and story decisions, but I've come to find that I think Spielberg's version might actually be the superior one. Mike Feist crushes it here. Obviously, everyone knows him from Challengers right now, but he does play riff in this film. I sing a lot of the music from West Side Story, Something's Coming, Maria, all these songs I find myself just constantly singing. Spielberg crushed it with the directing itself, the scene in the gymnasium. I mean, it blows my mind how he was able to pull that off, and he's consistently proven that he's one of the best directors around decade after decade. I mean, this man's been around since the 1970s, and he's still innovating the game and changing the way that we view films. This movie rules. Rachel Zegler crushes it. Ariana DeBose won an Oscar. If you love musicals, you'll love this version of West Side Story. And tonight, there you go. I'm probably going to sing a couple more times in this video, so just get your earplugs ready. At number 16 on my list, I've got Onward. This is the most underrated Pixar movie. I'm going to say that. I'm going to die on that hill. People will trash this movie. People will throw it in the garbage and stomp on it. I love it. And the reason I resonate so deeply with it, I've told you on the channel before, is because I have an older brother, so I personally just relate to this film. I know a lot of people out there have brothers, so if you have a sibling, I feel like this one, especially if you have a brother, you'll probably have a soft spot for this movie. It's got a sense of adventure. There's some clear, nods to Raiders of the Lost Ark with the gelatinous cube and the boulder. Like, there are so many moments where I'm like, oh, that's like from Indiana Jones, or this is like a fun road trip adventure as well. It just worked for me. It's an original idea from Pixar with lots of heart, and it came out like a week or so before the pandemic, so it was the last movie I got to see in the big screen before the world was shut down for months, so it's a special one to me. I know I'm higher on that movie than a lot of people, though. But at number 15 on my list, I've got Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. It is an achievement in animation. I mean, I don't think there's been a more elaborately animated film maybe ever. Correct me if I'm wrong, or let me know your opinions, but the strenuous amount of work that went into this film is truly impressive. Now, I'm not going to touch on the potentially toxic work environment. There were reports. I don't want to get into all that. But regardless, the final product is a thing of beauty. Then you get into the actual story itself, and it's almost an improvement on Into the Spider-Verse. Those movies are like neck and neck to me. I think I still give the edge to Into, but Across is a damn great sequel. Spider-Gwen gets her time to shine, and the opening. The score, I believe Daniel Pemberton composed the original tracks. Chills multiple times. Everyone has their distinct theme, from, like I said, Spider-Gwen to Miguel O'Hara, or Spider-Man 2099, if you will. The animations there, we got like 1,000 Spider-Man variants in this one chase scene that's one of the coolest Spidey scenes we've seen on the big screen. The movie is a part one, and it sucks. We're going to have to wait a couple more years to see this next part. So in a sense, you could argue it feels incomplete, and I felt that way. That's what holds it back from being like a 5 out of 5 is it doesn't feel like a final part one like many can. Like, say, Dead Man's Chest to At World's End, for example. I feel a sense of conclusion within one story, but still a lot of build-up and excitement for the next part. Same with, like, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, heading into the final reckoning. This one kind of really did hit us with the big old cliffhanger to be continued, but it sucks because Beyond's not coming out, like, in 6 months or a year. Like, we're going to have to wait a couple years or a few years eventually. So that's the big bummer here, but still, it is one of the best Spider-Man films out there, but all of them are great Spider-Man films. So it might be like 5 on my list, but that's still really damn good considering the films above it. At number 14 on my list, I've got The Iron Claw. This movie was done dirty by A24. It should have gotten a lot of Oscar noms, and they just completely mismarketed the film and missed their opportunity, because this thing should have been nominated for a bunch of things like Best Picture, Actor. That's just a damn shame it went without any nominations, but still, The Iron Claw wrecked me emotionally. If you've seen this movie, you know, it's sad. I don't think I'll ever be able to watch it again. It's so damn depressing. Ugh, I didn't want to get into it. If you have siblings in general, you're going to relate to this film, and there's just so much genuine heartbreak and raw emotion on display. It's Zac Efron's best performance. Jeremy Allen White crushes it. It really does kind of shine a light on how real wrestling can be. I know a lot of us, including myself, view it as like a joke. Oh, it's all scripted, but it takes a physical and mental toll on the body and the mind, and the Iron Claw really portrays that so well. This movie slept on by the Oscars, and I really don't know how it went unrecognized. It makes me sick. But at 13 on my list, I've got The Holdovers. Talk about a modern-day Christmas classic. There's a certain warmth to this movie that you just want to toss it on during the holiday season, but at the same time, it's depressing in a way, as it shows loneliness around the holiday season. And I can't speak for everyone, but you know, sometimes the holidays you can get nostalgic about, but you can associate a longing for the past with it, and this movie just stirs up all those emotions inside me. It's very well done. There's a lot of surprisingly funny humor that works in this film. Giamatti and Dominic Sessa's chemistry's off the charts. It's a modern Christmas classic, and the coolest part about this film is the sound design, as well as the film itself makes it feel, look, and sound like a movie from decades ago, so it has a very vintage, cozy feel to it. At number 12 on my list, I've got Blackberry. Came out in 2023, and this movie should have been nominated for Best Supporting Actor. I will die on that hill. Glenn Howerton of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia fame, Dennis Reynolds' baby,
Seize the gap!
should have been nominated.
I'm from Waterloo, where the vampires hang out.
His character reminded me a lot of like Fletcher from Whiplash with his outbursts, but as a movie, if I had to give you a comparison, I'd go The Social Network. As you know, that's one of my top 5 favorite movies of all time. I find it infinitely rewatchable, and this is comparable because it's one of those like corporate biopic type films that's almost shot like Succession or The Office in a way, with the zoom-ins. And it's a fascinating story. It's about the rise and fall of the BlackBerry phone, specifically in the business world. And it really did kind of remind me of The Social Network. So that genre of film is one of my favorites, like the tech biopic films, like Steve Jobs, you could sort of categorize in that as well. This was just fresh, and it reminded me so much of The Social Network that I have a soft spot for it. But at 11 on my list, I've got Christopher Nolan's Tenet, the movie that brought us back to the theaters in the pandemic. Saw this one twice in theaters, back-to-back nights. The first night, my brain melted. Then I thought on it, went back and saw it again, and I kind of had a lot more clarity. But Nolan changes the game for filmmaking, and especially here with action sequences. The highway scene is mesmerizing. You've got the, the scene with the Boeing sort of crashing into the hangar. Like, these are just massive in scale action scenes, and Nolan knows how to handle those so well. This might be his trippiest, most confusing film, like undoubtedly I would say that, but after thinking on it and watching it a couple times, you can kind of start to connect to the pieces of the puzzle. It elicits so many emotions. There's thrills, there's surprising emotional core to the film that some people say is absent. I disagree. Elizabeth Debicki's character you can kind of resonate with. Robert Pattinson's just cool as shit in this movie, and John David Washington's protagonist is also a badass. So this movie's awesome. It's just Nolan doing this big action, trippy, time travel-esque movie. I ate it up. But getting into the top 10, at number 10, I've got Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Talk about sending a trilogy off into the sunset. James Gunn, you knocked it out of the park here. I don't have much else to say except for the fact that the dog days are over, baby. At number 9 on my list, I've got John Wick Chapter 4. All I'm going to say about this one, because I've talked about it so much as well, is the dragon's breath scene is cinema. There's like 3 action sequences that go on for like 20 minutes at a time, back to back to back. So for like the last hour of this movie, action sequences are just one-upping each other. Like, it starts with the car chase and John Wick like getting out and fighting people as cars are flying by. Then we got this oneer of him just mowing people down with various weapons, including Dragon's Breath as an attachment on a shotgun. And then we get to the whole stair showdown. This movie rules. It's one of the coolest action films I've seen on the big screen, and I don't know if they need to do John Wick 5. I think to let him rest. I'm not here for 5. We'll see how Ballerina is, but Chapter 4 rules. It's my favorite John Wick movie. At number 8 on my list, I've got Deadpool and Wolverine. I adore this one, and I had it at number 1 on my list. in the 2024 movies, my top 10 favorites. I said in that video, the placement of my top 3 doesn't matter here, my top 3 of 2024 that is, because they're all 5 out of 5s and they're all equal. So for this video, I'm like, I'm going to switch up the order because the placement doesn't really matter. So I have Deadpool and Wolverine. This was that event movie we needed. It was special. It was obviously huge in scale and gave us some surprise characters like, you know, Blade, played by Wesley Snipes. We got Jennifer Garner's Electro. We got Channing Tatum finally playing Gambit. But the movie has a lot of heart, and it shows a new side of Deadpool, really, of him wanting more out of life, while simultaneously having this new variant of Logan who feels like he's failed his world and he's down in the dumps. So they both have to sort of work together and rise up and better themselves. I really just dug the hell out of Deadpool and Wolverine. It's super funny as well and very rewatchable. At number 7 on my list, I've got Challengers. I hope this movie wins Best Score at the Oscars because that thing's addicting. That score, Trent Reznor, Atticus Ross, Cook, as always. But this movie is essentially a thriller, a pulse-pounding one, might I add. Zendaya, Mike Feist, Josh O'Connor are in this sort of love triangle, and it's just a riveting watch. I was enthralled by the drama here. Every scene, I'm just so intensely paying attention to every line of dialogue. The tennis sequences are shot so uniquely, especially in the third act when you've got, you know, the match point scene. That might be the scene of last year for me. It's fast-paced, intense. It gets a little hot and heavy, if you know what I'm talking about. So, Challengers, gotta love it. And then at number 6 on my list, I've got Wicked. This is the musical movie event of our lives. I'm going to say it. It's the highest grossing Broadway musical adaptation of all time, I want to say. Part 2 comes out this year called For Good, and I think that's going to do numbers at the box office. But Wicked was this cultural phenomenon. I can't stop listening to the soundtrack. I mean, the defying gravity moment at the very end is so chill-inducing, but moment after moment in this film stands out to me. It's such a lovely musical film, and it was fresh. Gotta love me some Wicked. I have not been able to get the songs out of my head. Bringing us into the top 5, we've got another musical, Tick, Tick, Boom. This came out in 2021 on Netflix, directed by Lin-Manuel Miranda, and I will die on this hill. Please comment down below if you agree. Andrew Garfield was robbed of an Oscar win. He was nominated alongside Will Smith, who won for King Richard. He's very good in that movie, but Garfield should have won. This is his best performance in his entire career, in my opinion. Theft that he didn't win. But this movie is one that reminds me, hey, you need to live your life to the fullest and chase your dreams. The song 3090 is one that I usually listen to around my birthday every year. I don't know why, but I always just get in my fuels and listen to this soundtrack sometimes. Louder than words, there's a lyric where it's like, what does it take to wake up a generation? This movie gets me on my feet by the end. It's an emotional roller coaster with some real sad moments. You'll, get the tears will be flowing. You need your tissues if you're watching Tick, Tick, Boom, but this is a special musical, and Jonathan Larson is an inspiration, and he kind of has a tragic life by the end of the film, so it's just a really well-done musical film and an inspirational watch for sure. But at number 4 on my list, I've got The Batman. I'm Vengeance, baby. This is the definitive Batman film to me. I know The Dark Knight exists. It's a 5 out of 5 movie, but if we're talking specifically a Batman movie, give me The Batman. It is a true detective Batman. When I watch this movie, I feel like I am watching an Arkham game play out, and I grew up playing those games and loving them, and that just feels like true Batman to me. It's a lot darker, it's grittier. You've got Paul Dano as a creepy Riddler in this film. Colin Farrell's Penguin crushes it, and of course, Jeffrey Wright's Gordon is the most slept on, cast member in this film. Gordon and Batman's back and forths make for some really awesome humorous moments. Like, surprisingly, the movie has some humor, but the car chase with the Penguin and the Batman, oh my god, cinema. And Giacchino's score is just the icing on the cake for me. Like, that is the cherry on top. When I listen to it, I feel like I want to run through a damn brick wall. So The Batman rules, and we're staying in the comic book movie genre for my number 3, which is Spider-Man No Way Home. I will defend this movie to the end of time. I know people have turned on it, called it nostalgia bait, call it whatever you want. I love it, and I always will. It's special to me. It is the Spider-Man movie because it brought together different generations of Spider-Man on the big screen, but it's not like they just had Tobey and Andrew show up for no reason. Their characters, their Peters, really did come in at the lowest of lows for Tom's Peter, brought him out of hell, essentially, and got him back on his feet and said, hey, we've been through this before. We've lost, our Uncle Ben and Gwen, but you gotta keep persevering for the greater good. And this is really the first time Tom's Peter faces such great adversity. He loses his Aunt May, and so he's down in the dumps. They bring him out and help him rise up out of the ashes, essentially, and it's just so uplifting. I adore Spider-Man No Way Home. Of course, you've got 3 Spideys swinging together on the big screen, something I never envisioned seeing as like a 7-year-old when I was watching the Raimi trilogy, so I'll always hold a special place in my heart for No Way Home. But that's not just why I love the movie. I think the action's there. It's got a compelling story, like I said, and it's the best we've seen Tom's Peter in the MCU. The final moments, too, we've got a fresh start. We've got a street-level Spidey, just, in New York City, new suit. He's living in an apartment on his own. It feels like we're heading in the right direction. And so No Way Home, you'll always have my heart. My runner-up, number 2, is going to be Top Gun Maverick. This is maybe the most rewatchable movie on this list. I've seen it a handful of times. It's very nice to watch on a plane in kill time, but the practical, action in this film is really what sells it. Tom Cruise's commitment shines through, just like with the Mission Impossible movies. He does that here as well. It is the summer blockbuster event of the decade, I would say. And my God, is this movie just addicting. There's no other way to describe it. It's an addicting movie. Right when the credits roll, you want to watch it back again. It gave us Glenn Powell as Hangman. You got Miles Teller, and of course, Maverick himself returning. The practice run where he has to beat like 2 minutes and 15 seconds or whatever. That is the best scene in the movie to me. Never fails to get me clapping and give me full-body chills. My number 1 movie of the decade so far has got to be Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer, Best Picture winner from 2023. Ludwig Göransson's score from this film is my most listened to score on Spotify. It's been on my Spotify Wrapped 2 years in a row now, so I'm not playing around when I say that. It is editing fuel. I use it as background music when I'm just walking around, and it just adds some ambiance to my life. I really dig it. But the movie itself chronicles J. Robert Oppenheimer's life and, the creation of the atomic bomb. It shows a darkness in humanity. It's sort of tragically beautiful in a way. That's how I describe the film. Like the final moments, the scene with him and Einstein, chills. Nolan knows how to end a damn movie. But I was so wrapped up in the courtroom drama elements of the film. Like around the 2/3 mark, we get to see the bomb go off, and then we kind of move on from it. And then the final, like damn near hour of the movie is sort of this courtroom drama. And that might have been the most compelling part of the movie to me, which some people say that's not the case. To me, I was even more invested in that than I might have been in the first 2/3. So Oppenheimer is an achievement to me. And I watched the behind the scenes features where Nolan invented new technology for this film with the black and white IMAX tech. It's out of this world impressive. Nolan continues to change the game for filmmaking as a medium, and I can't wait to see what he does with the Odyssey. But this movie racked up the Oscars, rightfully so. Killian, won lead actor. RDJ won, finally. I mean, this movie deserved all the accolades it received, and it is my favorite movie of the decade so far. But those are my top 20 favorite movies of the 2020s so far. Let me know yours in the comments down below and hit that like button. Subscribe to that notification bell, and stay tuned for more content coming very soon. But until next time, I'll see you guys later.